Trump's people. Let's play hardball. Good evening. I'm Chris Matthews in Washington, and welcome to the Hardball Labor Day show. And for purposes of this holiday, we're calling it The Real Characters of Trump World. President Donald Trump campaigned on his star factor as the host of the reality show The Apprentice. And that mindset has followed him all the way into his presidency, where there's never a slow news day, and every action he takes falls somewhere under unprecedented. For the next hour, we're going to look at the cast of characters of Trump's reality show presidency. There are the villains, the sycophants, of course, the flippers, and the would-be celebrities, of course, and some of them are heading to prison, and others are helping to put former allies in prison. There's been backbiting, social climbing, conspiracies, and, yes, relentless drama. And one sideshow came full circle when Omarosa Manigault Newman, who played the villain on The Apprentice and later a White House aide, came out with a new tell-all book. Omarosa's strategy on The Apprentice was to mirror Trump's own behavior. Here she is on season 1.
Heidi was fantastic, and I will tell you that I haven't always been a fan of Heidi. I haven't always thought that she was professional, nor did she have much class or finesse. But in this case,
it's one of the worst compliments I've ever heard.
That's compliment. I have no class.
But I've been very candid with Heidi,
Yes,
have I not?
I appreciate that.
But in this instance,
Clients
her
are gonna love me.
edge
I don't
and
know. I'm not so sure. That's maybe the worst thing I've
I
heard.
think it's
here.
the worst thing I've heard. I have a lot of class.
That's the worst thing I think I've ever heard. That's the worst compliment I've ever heard.
Well, Omarosa used her book tour to keep her story relevant by making news in every interview. Let's watch. I asked you before a couple hours ago, Omarosa, if you have any other recordings. You wouldn't share them here. Do you got some?
oh, I have plenty.
Anything Mueller would like to see? Mr. Robert Mueller?
If his office calls again,
Would you be a good witness in
I'll
this
share.
investigation by Mueller?
Absolutely, anything that they want, I will certainly.
Do you think Trump should
corroborate.
be impeached?
At this point, yes.
You were instructed, according to your book, to bring up the emails at every point you could at the end of the 2016
That's
campaign.
correct.
Hillary Clinton's emails.
Yes, that was our talker.
Did Donald Trump know about those emails before they came out?
Absolutely. It's interesting that he's trying to silence me, so what is he trying to hide? He thought, that I could be disposed of, but Donald Trump is wrong. Trevor, I would say this. If you see me in a fight with a bear, pray for the bear. Everything that's in my book, Unhinged, everything that you see is in quotes, is verifiable, it's documented, and it's corroborated.
Why did you feel?
And when others tried to refute her, Omarosa had the tapes to back up her claims. Here's her recording of Chief of Staff John Kelly firing her in the Situation Room.
I think it's important to understand that if we make this a friendly departure, we can all be, you can look at your time here in the White House as a year of service to the nation, and then you can go on without any type of difficulty in the future relative to your reputation.
Well, and after former Trump campaign aide Katrina Pearson said she was never a part of a conversation about whether Trump used the N-word on The Apprentice, Omarosa released a tape of that very conversation about Trump to CBS this morning. Let's listen.
I'm trying to find out at least what context it was used in to help us maybe try to figure out a way to spin it.
Patton then described a conversation she had with then-candidate Trump about making the slur.
I said, well, sir, can you think of any time that this might have happened? And he said no.
Well, that's not true.
He goes, how do you think I should handle it? And I told him exactly what you just said, Omarosa, which is, well, it depends on what scenario you're talking about. And he said, well, why don't you just go ahead and put it to bed? I don't know what the scandal is. No, he said it. He's embarrassed.
Well, Omarosa also released audio of Trump's daughter-in-law, Laura Trump, offering her, Omarosa, a job on the 2020 campaign in exchange for her staying quiet about her time in the White House.
Sounds a little like, obviously, that there's some things back in the back pocket to pull out. Clearly, if you come over as a campaign, we can't have, we gotta...
Oh, God, no.
Everybody's positive, right?
I'm joined right now by Shannon Pettypiece, a White House reporter for Bloomberg News, Jason Johnson, politics editor at TheRoot.com, Betsy Woodruff, politics reporter at The Daily Beast, and Dana Milbank, political columnist with The Washington Post. Also, Jonathan Allen, national political reporter for NBC News Digital. What a cast to talk about what a cast, and I must say that. Shannon, she seems to be the first person to stride onto the stage, and I mean the stage, who has the same abilities for TV, the game that Trump plays so well, that he has.
Well, case in point, having audio. What makes for good TV? Audio, tapes, visuals. She understood that. It's a basic thing. But, you know, President Trump, the ultimate producer, she's also an ultimate producer. You know, knows how to present herself on TV, knows how to get attention with a tape recording. And I think there's a lot that's been said about Omarosa, but I think she has highlighted a very crucial flaw in Trump, that he has a hard time seeing who his friends are and who his enemies are. She was obviously making these tape recordings for a long time. He obviously thought she was someone he could trust, and has, of course, been proven wrong.
And he built her up, Jason. He made this. He stepped back and glowed at her performances on The Apprentice. You could see that.
Kept bringing her through, did the Omarosa ultimate merger, a dating show for her. I mean, he created this monster, for lack of a better word. But I have
or a Beckett, if you want to be literary.
Yeah.
A Beckett.
But here's the thing that also is fascinating. You could teach a master's class on her book rollout. I have never seen anyone, and we've seen books come out of White Houses before, who managed to do like 72 straight hours of press and drop one little nugget of information on every single show she went on. This is dangerous for national security, but it's a brilliant rollout on her behalf.
And I think it's a fall rollout to come. I think it's still going. Shannon. I mean,
I think that's true. One thing that's important to remember with Omarosa is that she very much was pure showman. During her time in the White House officials told us repeatedly that she just wasn't moving the ball forward on many important issues. And in fact, there was nearly a crisis in the lead up to the first African-American History Month of Trump's presidency, because Omarosa was supposed to have a leadership role in setting up events, making things happen. And the night before, certain White House officials realized that there were a number of people who hadn't been invited, who hadn't been looped in. So it was almost a minor crisis. And there's a host of examples of situations like that, where Omarosa, instead of accomplishing jobs she was supposed to get done with, seems to be focused more on being in the room for certain meetings. And of course, the fallout of that is she had recordings from being in the room for those meetings, with tectonic consequences.
In a weird way, too, she was perceived by a lot of White House aides as being incompetent, but I was also told that Trump always trusted
incompetent
her. Always
what?
would be.
Right. And what is the function?
I don't know what her job was. I mean, I literally asked her that question at a conference last year, and she couldn't really explain it. That's part of how you get in trouble.
But
the president might have the same answer when asked about his job and moving the ball forward. There's a certain cosmic justice in the whole thing here. The president came in, and who's he going to staff his administration with? The usual suspects had absolutely no interest in it. What he did is he built his staff in his own model. It may not be trustworthy, may be a little fast and loose with the truth, questions about loyalty, but brilliant showmen. So this works to an extent when they're all rowing in the same direction. But what you're seeing now with a Michael Cohen, with an Omarosa, is they have prodigious talents if they're used against you.
They sure are. Anyway, former Trump lawyer Michael Cohen took center stage this year after he implicated the president paying hush money to adult film actress Stormy Daniels and Playboy model Karen McDougal during the 2016 election. Like those references to adult actress and anyway, Playboy, the whole thing. This is so Trumpian. Anyway, Cohen released a secret recording of himself and the president discussing a possible payment to McDougal. Let's listen to this tape recording.
I need to open up a company for the transfer of all of that info regarding our friend David, so that I'm going to do that right away. I've actually come up and I've spoken to Alan Weisselberg about how to set the whole thing up with funding. Yes. And it's all the stuff, because you never know where that company, you never know where he's going to be. Correct. So I'm all over that. And I spoke to Alan about it when it comes time for the financing, which will be. Listen. What financing? We'll have to pay you. So no. I got no. Hey, no. How are you?
Well, Cohen isn't a new figure in Trump world. Of course, in a tape from 2015 that was released by NPR this year, he made an astonishing claim to a reporter asking about allegations by Trump's first wife, Ivana, in a 1989 deposition that Trump raped her. Let's listen.
You're talking about Donald Trump. You're talking about the front runner for the GOP presidential candidate, as well as private individual who never raped anybody, and of course understand that by the very definition, you can't rape your spouse.
Well, Ivana said in 2015 that the story is totally without merit. Well, Cohen then threatened the reporter.
Mark my words for it. I will make sure that you and I meet one day while we're in the courthouse, and I will take you for every penny you still don't have, and I will come after you, Daily Beast, and everybody else that you possibly know. Do not even think about going to where I know you're planning on going. So I'm warning you, tread very lightly, because what I'm going to do to you is going to be disgusting. Do you understand me? Don't think you're going to hide behind your pen, because it's not going to happen.
Jonathan, do you understand me? Do you understand me? That is mob talk, and that is definitely backroom in the back room with the rubber hose. Don't mess with me stuff. That's not the somewhat sympathetic figure we see walking to and from the courthouse these days.
He's a lovely, calm gentleman. I think Hollywood actors are going to be fighting each other to play Michael Cohen in the movie version of all this someday. I mean, this character is unbelievable. You see, shame and contrition in the courtroom the other day. Again, talking like a mob enforcer, not a fixer or a lawyer, but like an enforcer. What's fascinating, though, about the recording of Trump, which seems to implicate a lot of other people, or at least bring them in, David Pecker, other lawyers at the Trump operation. What's amazing about that tape is that that's what you would expect the FBI to get if they had a wiretap authorized. And this is Michael Cohen taping it himself. You have to wonder about two things. Number one, how little he trusts Donald Trump to begin with. And number two, sort of how dumb he is to do that in terms of the potential for that to become a huge legal liability for himself in the future, as we have seen it did.
How many mob movies have we seen? I've seen a lot where they always check to see if you're wired. Trump never checked to see if these guys are wired. These women they're wired when they go in to see him.
Yeah, no, and it does. I mean, we say this over and over again, but it does have that sort of a mob feel to it. Like they should all have, certain nicknames that should be passed around.
Mikey the Rat.
Yeah, right, and everybody has their price for a certain amount. There appears to be loyalty. You have the president, talking about, John Dean the Rat.
Yeah.
You have him talking about, flipping. Flipping should be a crime.
Alfonso Capone.
Right.
Yeah, I thought it would be Tezio. It was the smart move. It was Clemenza. I mean, the one that comes to you is the traitor. I mean, it's all fitting in here, Jason.
I don't understand. See, this is why I don't understand why anyone went to GoFundMe for this guy, right? Like, why are people coming to his defense now? Yeah.
Well, I want to see more of it. I'll give up some.
When he's clearly sort of that aggressive. But I also think the other thing is important, and this speaks to the culture of this administration in general. You notice also that his logic was, oh, you can't do that to your wife. That speaks to that sort of overall misogyny in this administration. That, like,
who said that? But who's asked you?
Well, that's literally Cohen. He's like, your definition, you can't rape your wife. Ask John Wayne Bobbitt. You can't. I mean, it's just it speaks to not only the violence, the misogyny, but also just the rage that seems to flow through every member of this administration.
Well, meanwhile, former campaign manager Paul Manafort has been a major target of the Mueller investigation. Though Manafort was in charge of Trump's campaign during the pivotal months spanning the end of the Republican primary season through the Republican National Convention, the president has attempted to diminish that role. Let's watch this.
I think the whole Manafort trial is very sad. When you look at what's going on there, I think it's a very sad day for our country. He worked for me for a very short period of time, but you know what? He happens to be a very good person, and I think it's very sad what they've done to Paul Manafort. Thank you very much.
Well, before joining the Trump campaign, Manafort had extensive political and financial ties to Russia, of course. We know that. He also attended that Trump Tower meeting with the Russian lawyer to get dirt on Hillary Clinton and played a role in softening the Republican Party platform on aiding Ukraine against Russia, all helpful to Moscow. Well, during the campaign, however, Manafort denied that the Trump campaign had any relationship with Russia. Let's watch.
Are there any ties between Mr. Trump, you, or your campaign, and Putin and his regime?
No, there are not. It's absurd, and there's no basis to it. This is an absurd attempt by the Clinton campaign to try and get the focus off of what the real issue is. They're pretty desperate pretty quickly, that's all I have to say on that.
What do you make of this guy? And lately, Trump's going back to him, Shannon, and showing tremendous empathy for the guy, like, I'm going to pardon you, buddy.
And Trump doesn't, I mean, like most things with Trump, you don't have to say anything. You could just be quiet. You don't have to step into this. Trump goes out of his way, even on Twitter, to defend Paul Manafort. There seems to be a pretty growing consensus. I don't have any fact that this is the case, but an assumption of a Paul Manafort pardon coming at some point. There seems to be a growing assumption of that. And he also likes to portray Paul Manafort as someone who's barely involved in the campaign, which is a classic move. Everyone who gets caught up in some legal issue is now all of a sudden someone he barely knew.
Yeah, but, Betsy, he also did that with Flynn for a while, remember? He was sort of teasing him, offering him, well, I'm really sad for the guy. And then he sort of stopped that stuff. He's still working on Manafort.
What's interesting about the Flynn situation is that he has been working with Mueller's team for months and months now, and the date of his sentencing keeps getting moved forward. Now, there hasn't been public reporting as to what exactly Flynn is helping Mueller find out, but it's generated a ton of speculation, and I imagine some stress in the White House that this person who is deeply involved in the president's campaign, deeply involved in those consequential early few days of his presidency, has been quietly talking with Mueller for months.
So many concerns if you're Trump. Anyway, the panel's sticking with us for this hour. And up next, this